Here in New York, we are just now learning about what looks like a serious terror plot allegedly planned by a man with connections to the terrorist group Hezbollah. Federal prosecutors filed charges today against a New Jersey man arrested in July. He allegedly scouted locations for possible attacks in Manhattan, Boston, and in Washington, D.C. Federal authorities believe that Alexei Saab is an actual member of Hezbollah and has extensive training in assembling explosives. He became a naturalized U.S. citizen in 2008, despite having those alleged ties to Hezbollah long before that date. He currently lives in suburban Morristown, New Jersey. Saab is facing several federal charges, including conspiracy. The evidence against him includes pictures of the potential targets on his phone. Those targeted locations also included the George Washington Bridge and the Empire State Building in New York City, Fenway Park in Boston, and the Washington Monument in the nation's capital. Authorities say he focused on structural weaknesses of locations to try and determine how an attack could cause the most destruction. All right, to discuss these developments, let's bring in Gadi Adelman. He's a counterterrorism expert and advisor. Gadi, thanks for being with us. Gadi, potentially devastating terrorist attacks thwarted with this arrest of this Hezbollah scout. He was apparently looking for targets to report back to the Hezbollah leadership in Lebanon. Help us understand what kind of presence Hezbollah has in the U.S.
Well, you know, this is something that we've talked about before, and I believe on your show I mentioned that you can go as close as Tijuana, Mexico, and Hezbollah has an office there. This is something that people in the United States need to be aware of. The ongoing, constant fight that we are having. People think, 9/11, it was 18 years ago, we're safe now. That is not the case. There are currently over 1,000 cases open, current cases open across the United States by the FBI and the Joint Terrorism Task Force for potential situations such as this.
And it's very disturbing when you look at the kind of targets that this Hezbollah terrorist was scouting, targets like the George Washington Bridge, Herald Square, just a few blocks away from our studios, Fenway Park in Boston, all relatively soft targets open to the public. How difficult is it to secure those kind of targets?
It is. You just mentioned it. They're soft targets. And among the other targets that you didn't mention were also airports and tunnels in the New York area. Think of the devastation of any of the tunnels that run from New Jersey into New York. I mean, this is massive. And this guy was trained and had experience with explosives. So we're not talking about a situation where the FBI just found somebody and they spoke to him and he said, yeah, maybe I'd like to do this. This was an individual working as a member of Hezbollah in the United States with bomb-making experience.
All right, Gadi, it's really very, very disturbing. And we're also now actually learning more disturbing details about a potential terrorist attack. Could be the American Airlines mechanic charged with sabotaging an aircraft in July at the Miami airport. Well, it turns out that Abdul-Majeed Marouf Ahmed Alani may have links to Islamic State. And at his bail hearing, it was revealed that Alani told arresting agents that he had a, quote, evil side. He made statements wishing that Allah would harm all non-Muslims. Agents also found that Alani shared ISIS videos on his cell phone, and some reports say he actually has a brother in Iraq who's a member of ISIS. Alani is also a naturalized U.S. citizen, originally from Iraq. He worked as an airline mechanic for 30 years. He's accused of disabling critical flight data equipment. Originally, Alani reportedly told police he did it because he was upset about ongoing union contract disputes. So he meant he had no harm and merely wanted to create more overtime and make more money here. Now, the pilots thankfully detected the problem before taking off. Alani has been denied bail and he's not yet charged with a terror-related crime. So, Gadi, what is your read on this? I mean, we have this mechanic claiming he didn't mean to cause any harm, just did it for the overtime. But now we're learning that he has ties to ISIS and that he has an ideology consistent with parts of jihadism. So what's your read on it?
Yeah, there's definitely no doubt. I have a feeling in the very near future he is going to be charged as a terrorist. And that was, if you read the court documents, some of the charges that that have been filed against him were also supporting terrorist organizations. So, and you just ran through the bulk of what this guy has. The ties are there. One does not have to be an expert or a rocket scientist to figure out this guy obviously has leanings towards ISIS ideology. His own brother, he admitted to investigators, his own brother is a member of ISIS, as well as the fact that he took a trip in March to see his brother and then lied about ever going there. He was in Iraq back in March. So this is an individual, it amazes me that we're still at the point in the United States where people are so politically correct and they're so concerned about being labeled a racist that when things like this, there are all these red flags that they don't come forward in advance. And this is what we need to do in both cases. Right. The individual from Hezbollah, this individual who was an airline mechanic, it was somewhere along the line. We went from the point where it was, if you see something, say something, right, to if you see something, say something, unless you're afraid you're going to be labeled a racist. I can tell you that the FBI and specifically the Joint Terrorism Task Force would much rather chase down a lead that goes nowhere and is wrong than have to later investigate a mass bombing or an airline crash where hundreds of innocent civilians were killed. And this is what people need to realize. If you have any doubts whatsoever about something you see, pick up the phone and call the FBI.
Yeah, arguably better be politically incorrect and potentially save lives. Gadi, thank you so much. Gadi Adelman, counterterrorism expert and advisor.